We were told this was a bridge, a simple path of stone and steel. But the architecture whispers a different truth, a forgotten function. They show us photographs of men in cloth caps, with horse-drawn carts and fragile wooden scaffolding, and they expect us to believe these same hands laid foundations of impossible precision in the violent depths of a river. Have you ever looked at these monuments and felt a deep, unsettling dissonance? A quiet hum of impossibility beneath the official story? If you too feel this static in the narrative, leave your coordinates in the comments. Let us know from where and from what time you are watching this transmission. I ask you now to become a forensic witness, to set aside the textbook and use the most powerful analytical tool you possess, your own eyes. We are not examining a historical photograph. We are examining a crime scene, frozen in time, hiding in plain sight. Look closer. Push past the sepia haze of the official record. Here, we see the alleged construction of a titan, the Brooklyn Bridge, the Tower Bridge. It does not matter which. The anomaly is the same. Your eyes are drawn upward, to the impossible scale of the masonry. Cyclopean blocks of granite, each weighing tens of tons, dressed and fitted with a precision that scoffs at the very notion of hand tools. We find it in the Trinity Bridge of St. Petersburg, a design supposedly French, built in Russia, yet sharing the same grand aesthetic. We find echoes of it in the forgotten railway bridges of Australia, structures erected in the middle of nowhere, with a level of stonework and engineering that was logistically preposterous for a fledgling colonial outpost. This is not evidence of a shared architectural trend, like Art Deco or Bauhaus. A trend is a choice of style. This is a choice of physics. This is a standardized, technological template, a global infrastructure project undertaken by a single, unified civilization, a civilization that had mastered metallurgy, harmonic engineering, and logistics on a planetary scale. A civilization that has been meticulously erased from our memory, leaving behind only these silent, gargantuan fossils. We have been programmed by the control matrix to see these as separate achievements of Victorian ingenuity. But the evidence, when viewed from a global perspective, screams of a single, unified source. A global empire, the one they call Tartaria. These bridges were never just bridges. To believe that is to accept the lie that a supercomputer is just a fancy calculator. We must understand their true function. They were the primary arteries of a planetary energy grid. Great stone and metal conduits designed to channel and modulate the atmospheric energy, the ether, that our current science has been conditioned to deny. You can almost feel the cold, dense reality of the stone through the photograph, the silent hum of its perfect geometry. Gothic arches soar towards a sky they seem to have known before, their curves calculated to a divine degree. This is the architecture of giants. And then, look down. Look at the men, scattered figures in woolen rags, mired in the mud and chaos below. They are small, frail. Their faces, blurred by the long exposure, are smudged with dirt. Their tools are primitive hammers and chisels. Their transport, wooden carts pulled by weary horses. Look at their scaffolding. A fragile web of timber that looks as though it would splinter under the weight of a single man, let alone serve as the cradle for a 10-ton block of granite. There is a grotesque disconnect here, a fundamental violation of physics and logic. These men do not look like the master builders of this colossus. They look like scavengers, like a cleanup crew arriving after a great and terrible event, tasked with clearing the rubble from around a structure that was already there. They are a primitive tribe that has discovered an abandoned aircraft carrier and is attempting to understand it by sweeping its decks. This is a scene of profound cognitive dissonance. The rivers they spanned were not obstacles, they were conductors. The water itself was part of the circuit. The monumental towers, with their metallic spires and copper finials, were not for decoration. They were atmospheric terminals, drawing energy from the ionosphere. The great arches were not merely for support, they were geometric resonators, tuned to specific frequencies to stabilize and amplify the energy flow. This was Antiquitech, a system of free, wireless energy, based on the natural resonance of the planet itself. And these arteries did not exist in isolation. They were the circulatory system connecting the major organs of the grid. Look at the old city maps. The great cathedrals, with their rose windows and bell towers, were not just places of worship. They were harmonic power plants, using sacred geometry and sound frequency to generate and broadcast energy. The star forts, Those geometric marvels of military engineering were not just for defense. They were giant capacitors, nodes for storing and regulating the flow of energy across the network. The obelisks, the ancient needles of stone we find in the capitals of the world, were not monuments. They were tuning forks, acupuncture needles for the planet, ensuring the entire grid remained in perfect harmonic resonance. This was the world that existed before the reset. Now, let us shift our gaze to the foundations, the very interface between these structures and the earth. In ancient cities, from Prague to Rome, we see the same inexplicable sign. Trace the elegant curve of a Roman or Gothic arch on a bridge. Follow it down until it vanishes, impossibly, into the soil of the riverbank. Entire levels of these magnificent structures are buried. The ground itself is the accomplice. The riverbanks rose. The world was buried under a deluge of something that was not water. This is not the slow work of sediment over millennia. This is a burial shroud of earth and time, cast over a world that was. And where the old world peeks through this shroud, we find the final damning piece of evidence. The scar tissue of the inheritors. Observe the original masonry on these ancient bridges. Seamless, intricate. A forgotten science of stone, fused together with no visible mortar, as if sung into place, and right next to it, a repair. A crude patch of brutalist concrete, stained and crumbling. Rusted rebar, the skeleton of our inferior technology, bleeding orange tears onto the ancient stone. This is not the signature of the Creator. It is the clumsy scrawl of a lesser being, trying to patch a technology it could never hope to replicate. A world connected not by wires and cables, but by a silent, invisible symphony of frequency and vibration. A world of unimaginable technological and spiritual advancement. But this network was damaged. The cataclysm, the Great Mud Flood, was a planetary-scale event that shattered this system. It was an act of war or a cosmic disaster that severed the connections, burying the lower levels of their cities and short-circuiting the grid. But it did not destroy everything. The most robust components, the ones with the deepest foundations, the great bridges, the cathedrals, the core of the star forts, survived. And this is where the second, more insidious phase of the destruction began. The great fires of the 19th century, Chicago in 1871, Boston in 1872, and countless others across the globe, were not accidents. They were a scorched earth policy enacted by the inheritors, the new elite who seized control after the cataclysm. These were not random acts of fate. They were controlled demolitions. Their purpose was to destroy the delicate secondary and tertiary components of the grid that remained within the cities, to erase the evidence of the old world's power system, and to clear the way for their new, primitive, and profitable paradigm of coal, steam, and oil. They couldn't build the network, but they could certainly burn it. It is the mark of a cargo cult, attempting to repair a starship with mud and sticks. Look closely at this image. Your own eyes are the only expert witness required here. They tell you this is a construction site, but you and I, we can see the truth. We can feel the logical breach. If you also see the impossibility, if you feel the deep, unsettling wrongness in this picture, acknowledge it. Let your, on this transmission be a signal flare, so that others, still searching in the dark, might find this evidence. The evidence is before us. A crime scene preserved for over a century. The question is no longer if a deception occurred, but to what end, and what fairy tale was invented to conceal it. Every great lie is built upon a foundation of sentimental truth. The official narrative, the one etched into our textbooks and memorialized on bronze plaques, is no exception. It is not presented to us as a technical manual, but as a bedtime story for a sleeping civilization. It's a tale designed to soothe, not to inform, a tale of heroism, of sacrifice, of man triumphing over the unforgiving elements. And like all well-crafted fictions, it falls apart under the cold, unblinking eye of forensic scrutiny. They left only the colossal skeletons of the old world, the bridges and grand buildings, which they then claimed to have built themselves, weaving elaborate cover narratives of heroic struggle against the odds. This is the great secret hidden in plain sight. The cognitive dissonance is built into the very fabric of our cities. The evidence is not in some dusty, forgotten archive. It is right in front of you, These structures, these architectural orphans, are everywhere. They are the footprints of the ghost. You have walked past them 1,000 times. The old city hall that looks more like a Roman temple than a municipal building. The central post office with its impossible granite columns. The courthouse that seems to have been built for giants. You have felt it, haven't you? That quiet, unsettling feeling that something is out of place. That the story doesn't match the stage. Now you have a name for it. It is the echo of a lost civilization. The resonance of a technology we were forced to forget. These structures are the scars of the reset. Monuments to our collective amnesia. Look around your own town, your own city. They are there. Tell us. Tell us where you have seen the impossible architecture of the world that was stolen from us. They tell us the story of the Brooklyn Bridge, a grand opera of human struggle staged between 1869 and 1883. They speak of its architect, John Roebling, a visionary struck down before his masterpiece could truly begin. They speak of his son, Washington, who took the mantle, only to be crippled by the very process of its creation, directing the final years of work from his window, a prisoner of his own ambition. They count the dead, at least 20 men consumed by the project, lost to accidents and the mysterious caisson disease. It is a powerful, tragic epic. It is also a meticulously engineered emotional smokescreen, a narrative designed to make you feel, so that you forget to think. Let us engage in a simple thought experiment. We are asked to believe that a society whose grasp on basic industrial safety was so tenuous that it treated human life as a disposable building material, a society that could not reliably prevent its workers from being crushed, drowned, or fatally decompressed, that this same society possessed the logistical genius and the refined technical capacity to manage a project of precision underwater engineering that would be a monumental challenge even today. Does this sound like a triumph of nascent industrial power, or does it sound like a desperate scramble to repair and understand something that was already there? We arrive now at the most unsettling layer of the excavation. We have audited the impossible logistics. We have traced the spectral footprint of a global, unified civilization. But the deepest, most melancholic truth is not found in the stones of these impossible bridges, but in the echoes of our own behavior. It is the story of the survivor, the inheritor, the amnesiac orphan living in the ruins of a palace he does not recognize. To understand what happened to us, we must look through the lens of anthropology at a phenomenon known as a cargo cult. In the remote islands of the South Pacific, after World War II, tribes who had witnessed the awesome power of military aircraft, delivering endless supplies, the cargo from the heavens, began to perform elaborate rituals. They would clear airstrips in the jungle, build life-size replicas of planes from wicker and vine, and mimic the gestures of the air traffic controllers, all in the desperate hope that their rituals would summon the return of the cargo-bearing gods. They replicated the form but had absolutely no understanding of the function. It is a heartbreaking story of a primitive people trying to interface with a technology so far beyond their comprehension that it could only be interpreted as magic. The story of heroism against impossible odds is the oldest trick in the book of historical revisionism. It is the anesthetic applied before the surgery of an inconvenient truth. When the technological and logistical gaps in the timeline become too vast to ignore, you fill them with the bodies of martyrs and the legend of a singular genius. This brings us to the myth of the founder. The figure of John A. Roebling is presented as the singular mind, the Promethean figure who invented the steel wire cable and conceived of this impossible structure from nothing. This is a classic narrative device, the creation of a figurehead to absorb all historical accountability. It simplifies the unexplainable. Our forensic analysis suggests a far more plausible and far more unsettling reality. Roebling was not a creator in the sense we are told. He was, by all indications, a brilliant engineer of reverse engineering. He was a man who likely encountered a colossal, pre-existing structure, perhaps damaged in the cataclysm we are not supposed to remember, and dedicated his life to understanding, repairing, and adapting it for the new paradigm. He did not build a bridge from the riverbed up. He built a usable surface onto an ancient Cyclopean foundation. His famed cable factory was not a hub of pure invention, but a laboratory of replication. And here is the question that should haunt your quietest moments. What if we are that tribe? What if our entire modern civilization is the most sophisticated, most widespread cargo cult in known history? We are the tenants of a technological palace, convinced we built it ourselves, yet we use its fusion reactors to toast our bread and its teleportation chambers as storage closets. We have inherited a world of incomprehensible sophistication and, having lost the instruction manual in a cataclysm we were programmed to forget, we simply mimic the motions of our ancestors. We perform rituals of maintenance on a machine we no longer know how to operate. Consider the great bridges, the subject of our forensic analysis. Look at their towers, those ornate spires, the intricate metal finials, the metallic filigree reaching for the sky like frozen lightning. Our history books label this Gothic revival or Victorian excess, a decoration, an aesthetic choice. This is the first doctrine of the cargo cult. When you do not understand the function of a device, you label it an ornament. But these were not ornaments. They were terminals. They were precision-engineered atmospheric energy collectors, designed to draw electrostatic energy from the ether and channel it into the grid. The geometry was not for beauty. It was for resonance. He studied the impossibly advanced metallic alloys he found in the remnants of the original structure, and did his best to reproduce them with the inferior technology of his time. His work was not an act of creation from a void, but an act of salvage. He was not the author of the masterpiece. He was its first and most dedicated restorer. The official narrative needs a hero, a human-scale explanation for a superhuman achievement. Roebling was posthumously cast in that role, a convenient focal point for a story that would otherwise have no believable protagonist. This is the very architecture of the engineering of forgetting. You do not simply erase the past. You overwrite it with a more palatable, more primitive, and more controllable version of events. You take a piece of inherited technology, a remnant of a lost golden age, and you weave a folktale around its reemergence. You invent a chronology that fits your new, diminished world. You create a story of struggle and death to explain away the sheer impossibility of the task, because suffering is a currency the modern mind can understand, while lost science is not. The narrative becomes a function of the control matrix, a story that reinforces our perceived limitations, that tells us this is the very pinnacle of what we were ever capable of. The materials were not for show. They were for conductivity. And what have we, the survivors, done with these advanced etheric antennas? We have hung bells in them, to be struck with crude hammers. We have placed clocks in them, shackling their timeless function to our own linear industrial time. Or, in the ultimate act of primitive appropriation, we have mounted a flagpole on them, a tribal symbol to claim ownership over a piece of technology we could not possibly replicate. We are the islanders, building a wicker control tower and waiting for the cargo to return. The evidence of this mimetic behavior is everywhere, a layer of ritualistic dust on every piece of inherited technology. Look closer at the architecture of these Tartarian structures. You will find niches, alcoves, and housings, now empty or filled with crude modern additions. Our archaeologists will tell you these were for statues, and indeed today they hold the graven images of our own short-lived gods, generals, politicians, and saints. But this is a desecration. It is the act of taking a functional port, a housing for a crystal regulator, a resonant capacitor, or a vibrational dampener, and plugging it with a piece of carved stone. It is the ultimate act of neutralization. By transforming a machine part into a memorial, the inheritors achieve two goals. And so, we are left with a choice. It is a choice presented to us every time we look at these impossible structures. Do you accept the comforting lullaby of the textbook, the simple, heroic story of brave men, their tragic sacrifices, and their singular genius? Or do you allow yourself to feel the profound cognitive dissonance? Do you hear the unsettling hum of the evidence itself? The quiet, persistent whisper from the stones that tells you the script is flawed, the actors are miscast, and the true authors of this magnificent stage have long since left the theater, leaving us, their amnesiac descendants, to perform a play we do not understand. The official story is fragile because it is a story. The bridges are not. They are facts, and they are waiting for us to remember how to read them. We have been told a story of heroism, of sacrifice, of men battling the elements with grit and ingenuity. It's a comforting fable, one that fits neatly into our narrative of linear progress. But now, we must leave the realm of stories. We must turn off the emotional overlay and enter the cold, sterile laboratory of mathematics. We are now conducting a logistical audit, and in this audit, numbers do not have feelings. First, they erase its original technological purpose, ensuring it can never be reactivated. Second, they overwrite its history with their own, stamping their new narrative directly onto the hardware of the old world. A power plant becomes a temple. A harmonic resonator becomes a rose window. An antenna becomes a cross. The function is forgotten, replaced by a ritual. The machine has been successfully turned into a monument, and the memory of its true purpose is buried under the weight of symbolism. This ritualization of technology extends beyond the physical. It infects our very ceremonies. Consider the grand inauguration of a new bridge or building. A politician, a member of the new ruling class, stands before the structure and performs a bizarre ritual. They cut a silk ribbon with a pair of scissors. We accept this as normal, a tradition. But it is the ghost of a lost science. This public ceremony is the degraded, cargo cult version of what was once a highly technical activation procedure. The original inauguration was not a photo opportunity for an elected official. It was likely a process performed by engineer priests, a ceremony of attunement. It would have involved calibrating the structure's resonant frequency, using sound or sympathetic vibrations, to integrate it, to switch it on, and connect it to the continental energy grid. They are simply true, or they are false. The numbers of the official Brooklyn Bridge narrative are not just false, they are an insult to the laws of physics and economics. Let us begin with the towers. These are not mere pillars. They are man-made mountains of granite, limestone, and cement. The official records, the ones they allow us to see, state that each tower contains approximately 159 cubic yards of masonry. In terms of weight, this is a conservative estimate of 40,000 tons. 40,000 tons of perfectly cut, dressed, and placed granite per tower. That is 80,000 tons in total, suspended on foundations allegedly sunk into a violent, churning tidal strait. For a moment, let us ignore the insanity of the underwater construction and focus only on the material. 80,000 tons. The narrative claims the granite was quarried in Maine, over 300 miles away. This journey was not made by freight trains or diesel-powered ships, but by wooden sailing schooners and barges, at the mercy of the Atlantic's winds and currents. Let us be generous. Let's assume an average 19th century barge could carry 250 tons of stone. To transport the granite for a single tower would require 160 separate, fully laden barge journeys. The original act was one of connection. Our modern ritual, the cutting of a ribbon, is an act of severance. It is a symbolic gesture, performed by a man who does not understand the machine he stands before, to declare his tribe's dominance over it. It is an empty, hollow pantomime, a pathetic echo of a forgotten power, designed to reinforce the cover narrative that To built this, that To are in control. We are not in control. We are children playing with the light switches in a dead god's house, and the ribbon cutting is us telling ourselves a comforting bedtime story that we are the masters here. This perspective is not meant to inspire arrogance, but a profound and piercing sadness. We are not to be condemned for our ignorance. We are to be pitied. We are a post-traumatic civilization, suffering from a species-level amnesia. Our cargo cult rituals are not a sign of foolishness, but a symptom of a deep subconscious memory of what was lost. We place statues in empty niches because we feel, on an instinctual level, that something is supposed to go there. We create elaborate ceremonies because we remember, in the marrow of our bones, that these structures demand respect and interaction. We are haunted by the ghost of a forgotten science. For both towers, that is 320 voyages, this is not a construction project. It is a sustained, multi-year naval invasion, a constant, unbroken river of stone flowing from New England to New York, navigating treacherous coastal waters, day after day, week after week, without fail. And what of the quarrying itself? We see the photographs. Men with hand drills, hammers, and volatile black powder. How many man-hours does it take to hew a single 10-ton block of granite from the earth with such primitive tools? How many more hours to dress it to the required precision? Now, multiply that by the thousands of blocks required. The numbers spiral into the realm of fantasy. A workforce of thousands would be needed at the quarries alone. An entire city of laborers, existing for the sole purpose of feeding this single project. Where are the records of this massive slave-like army? Where are the logistics for housing them, feeding them, clothing them? The supply chain required simply to quarry the stone would rival the logistics of the entire American Civil War. The infrastructure needed to build the bridge had to be more complex than the bridge itself. And yet, in the historical record, there is only a profound and deafening silence. We walk every day through the functioning ruins of our own lost golden age, utterly blind to the truth of what surrounds us. We are a culture defined not by what we have created, but by what we have inherited and misunderstood. If this vision of an amnesiac humanity, of a cargo cult performing rituals in a technological palace, resonates with you, if it validates that deep, unsettling feeling that something about our world is profoundly out of place, then check to see if you are subscribed. We need awakened minds here, because the first step in treating amnesia is for the patient to realize that they have forgotten something. And we as a species have forgotten almost everything. We exist as a cargo cult not by choice, but by design. We are the survivors of a war we were never told was fought. A war on memory itself. The transition from a world of resonant, etheric technology to our age of steam, smoke, and struggle was not a gentle evolution. It was a fracture. A violent, world-altering event meticulously erased from the record. This is the mechanism of the silence. It began with the ground turning to liquid. Imagine a cataclysm, not of fire or water, but of frequency. A planetary hum, a single, dissonant chord struck by a cosmic event or a terrible weapon that caused the very earth to lose its integrity. This is not an oversight. This is a void. This is negative evidence of a crime. The logistical paradox deepens when we leave the quarry and arrive at the construction site. These 80,000 tons of granite had to be lifted, often over 270 feet into the air, and placed with millimeter precision to form the intricate Gothic arches. The official explanation involves steam-powered derricks and wooden scaffolding. Look again at the images. Look at the spindly, fragile-looking timber frames clinging to the sides of these cyclopean towers. We are asked to believe that these rickety structures, which a strong wind might threaten, were capable of hoisting and positioning blocks of stone weighing as much as an elephant over and over again without catastrophic failure. The cognitive dissonance is staggering. We see a technology in the structure itself that is 1,000 years ahead of the tools supposedly used to build it. It's the paradox of the peasant in the palace. It makes no sense. But the granite is only the beginning of the audit. The true anomaly, the great silence in the narrative, is the complete vacuum of the required industrial ecosystem. Where are the records of the thousands of master stonemasons? We are not talking about simple bricklayers. Soil liquefaction on a global scale. A deluge of mud flowing like a slow, inexorable tide, not over the cities, but through them. It didn't wash them away. It consumed them, burying the foundational levels of a civilization far superior to our own. The great stone bridges, with their impossibly deep footings, survived. They were wounded, half drowned in the mire, but their spines remained unbroken, and in the mud-choked silence that followed, the inheritors arrived, the parasites. They crawled from the wreckage not as creators, but as editors. They did not build upon the earth. They built upon a lie. The official narrative of pneumatic caissons, of heroic men battling, the bends, to dig foundations in violent riverbeds, is a masterclass in narrative misdirection. A cover story of exquisite genius. It was never about digging down to asterisk builds a foundation. It was about digging down to asterisk reach one. They were not constructing, they were excavating. Clearing the mud and debris from the top of a pre-existing cyclopean structure to begin their crude patchwork repairs. This physical reclamation was only the first step. The true project was the engineering of forgetting, a campaign more total than any military conquest. First came the archival fires, both literal and metaphorical. Libraries vanished. Records were expunged. The construction of these towers, with their complex internal structures and load-bearing arches, required a level of expertise on par with the cathedral builders of medieval Europe. A society does not simply produce thousands of such artisans overnight. Where were the guilds, the apprenticeships, the schools that trained these men? They do not exist in the record. They are ghosts. And then there is the steel, The narrative proudly states that 14,000 miles of wire were spun to create the 4 main cables. This figure is a misdirection. The actual length of the individual wires used is over 400 kilometers, or 500 miles. Think about that. In the 1870s, a nation still recovering from a brutal civil war, a nation of steam and iron, supposedly produced over 5,000 kilometers of high-strength, galvanized steel wire of a uniform quality that would be a challenge for many modern factories. Where was the industrial plant capable of this output? Where was the Bessemer furnace of this scale? Where was the galvanizing facility? Where are the metallurgical records, the quality control reports, the invoices for the raw iron and zinc ore? They don't exist. The official story gives us a name, John A. Roebling. It presents him as the singular genius, the architect of it all. Patents were reassigned. History was not rewritten. It was curated, hollowed out, leaving a palimpsest scrubbed clean, with a childish scrawl of heroic inventors and rugged pioneers left in its place. Then, the new miraculous eye of the camera was weaponized. It was forbidden to see the ruins. It was commanded to document the heroic reconstruction. We were shown photographs not of a civilization being unearthed, but of one supposedly being born from scratch, by men in bowler hats. The World's Fairs were the grand finale of this deception. They were not celebrations of new invention. They were liquidation sales of inherited technology. The usurpers gathered the remaining functioning artifacts of the old world, the incandescent lights, the atmospheric energy devices, the silent, horseless carriages, and displayed them in magnificent, temporary palaces that were themselves Tartarian buildings. They unveiled our own stolen heritage to us, claiming it as their own. And then, when the show was over, they demolished the evidence. Every single time. They engineered a great silence, a void where our history should be. They count on us never questioning the gaps, never noticing the sheer impossibility of the timeline they fed us. Silence is their most potent weapon. Sharing this information is our defense. Our voice is the antidote to their engineered amnesia. This is the cornerstone of the cover narrative, attributing an impossibly vast industrial and logistical undertaking to a single heroic figure. It's like trying to explain the existence of a modern microprocessor by only talking about Steve Jobs, while completely ignoring the global network of silicon foundries, clean rooms, software engineers, and the entire semiconductor industry. The narrative erases the entire pyramid of industry and leaves only the capstone of a single man. It is an absurdity. It is the engineering of oblivion. We are staring at a mathematical impossibility, a logistical black hole. The project, as described, would have bankrupted nations far wealthier than post-war America. It would have required a workforce with skills they did not possess, and a technology they had not yet invented, all supported by a supply chain that leaves no trace in the historical record. The math doesn't lie. It doesn't have a political agenda. It doesn't care about our cherished national myths. It simply presents a result. And the result here is that the official narrative is a fabrication. We are not looking at a 19th century construction. We are looking at an artifact of an entirely different civilization. A piece of inherited technology that was found, repaired, and retrofitted, with its true origin deliberately and methodically erased from our memory. Send this to someone who is still listening for the echo of what was lost. We exist as cosmic orphans, sleepwalking through the ruins of a forgotten inheritance. We sit in our vehicles, trapped in the gridlock of a lesser age, inching across the circuits of a lost technology that could have powered our world. We have been taught that we are the pinnacle of creation, the builders of these cyclopean bridges. But this is the ultimate deception. We were not the architects of this grand design. We are the scavengers, the survivors, the amnesiacs camping in the courtyard of a fallen empire, using its priceless tapestries as blankets against a cold we do not understand. They have fed us a narrative of progress, a slow, painful crawl from the mud to the stars. Yet the evidence etched in every perfectly cut stone, in every impossibly vast arch, screams a different truth. We did not crawl up from the mud. We were cast down into it. We are the descendants of a civilization that mastered harmonics, that understood the resonant frequencies of the planet, and that built a world of effortless abundance. We are the children of giants, taught to believe we are pygmies. The cognitive dissonance is a sickness in our soul. We are told these structures were built for horse-drawn carts, yet they are over-engineered to a degree that defies the very laws of economics and physics of their supposed era. The numbers are the tracks left by the real builders. They are a quiet testament, waiting in plain sight, for those of us willing to perform the audit. If you can reconcile these figures within the accepted historical framework, if you can make this math work without invoking a logistical and industrial miracle, I would be genuinely interested to read your theory. The rest of us must now confront the consequences of this impossibility. The logistical paradox of Brooklyn is not an isolated anomaly. It is a single key, humming at a frequency that, once recognized, unlocks a global pattern. It is the thread we must pull to watch the entire tapestry of official history unravel. For this signature, this impossible fingerprint in stone and steel is everywhere. We are told these are monuments to the burgeoning industrial age, the proud, distinct achievements of separate, competing nations. But this is a carefully constructed lie, a narrative of convenience designed to mask a truth so vast, it defies the borders on our maps. Let us now spin the globe, but with our eyes open to the pattern. Let the vertigo set in. We leave the East River and cross the Atlantic in an instant. There, spanning the Thames in London, is the Tower Bridge. The same twin monumental towers, the same Gothic sensibility, the same sense of overwhelming scale that dwarfs the supposed technology of its era. This is the final and most profound layer of the Great Reset, the reset of human identity. They did not just bury our cities, they buried our potential. They did not just rewrite our history, they rewrote our very self-conception, replacing a legacy of mastery with a fabricated story of primitive struggle. To question the impossibility of a bridge is therefore not an academic exercise. It is an act of rebellion. It is a sacred act of memory reclamation. Every arch that defies the official narrative, every tower that whispers of a lost science, is a breadcrumb leading us back to ourselves. It is a fragment of our true, shattered heritage. Recognizing the lie is the first step. The second is to begin asking the question that they have spent centuries trying to erase from our minds. Who were we before they made us forget? What greatness is encoded in our very DNA, waiting to be unlocked once we shed the slave mentality they have imposed upon us? The path to remembering is not a gentle awakening. It is a violent exorcism of a lie that has possessed our collective soul. It is about reclaiming not just our history, but our dignity. The investigation does not end here. It is a perpetual excavation of truth, a duty we owe to the silent architects of our world. They tell us it was built in 1886. A different country, a different engineering team, yet the architectural DNA is identical. It is not an inspiration. It is a replication, a sibling from a lost family. From the Thames, we leap to the Danube. In Budapest, the Liberty Bridge, completed in 1896, presents us with the same intricate metalwork, the same towering pylons that seem to anchor the sky to the earth. We are told a Hungarian engineer designed it, a testament to the Austro-Hungarian Empire's prowess. But the design echoes the same core principles, the same lost science of harmonic resonance and structural integrity that we see in New York and London. We continue our journey, flying over Europe to the city of Porto in Portugal. The Dom Luís I Bridge, a colossal double-decked metal arch, looms over the Douro River. They credit it to a student of Gustave Eiffel in 1886. And while the style shifts from stone to iron, the underlying principle of its impossible scale and precision remains. The sheer audacity of the construction defies the official narrative of men with hammers and basic riveting tools. It speaks of a standardized industrial capacity that simply did not exist in the fragmented world of the late 19th century. The pattern repeats, a relentless echo across the world. If you can feel the resonance of this truth in your bones, if you are ready to stop being a tourist in your own past and become an archaeologist of your own identity, then your work has just begun. The evidence is everywhere, waiting for eyes that can truly see. Join us in deciphering it. The investigation does not stop here. If you wish to continue unearthing the truth with us, subscribe and activate the bell. Welcome to the Resistance.